Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Missing Link in Your Healing, the podcast where we offer you a holistic view to healing, dealing with the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic obstacles that stop us from expressing who we really are in the world. And hopefully, we bring you some of the things that you haven't thought about and that can help to get you closer to living an inspired, healthy, and fulfilled life. Today, we are talking about our near enemies. I almost called them hidden enemies.
Well, they are
Sorry.
hidden.
We're talking about near enemies. They are hidden, okay? So they are hidden. We're going to explain to you what they are and how to uncover them and how to use them so that you can facilitate your healing. So this is a topic, I must be quite honest, that I had never heard phrased in this way. Antoinette brought this to my attention. And it can be connected to many of the things that we've spoken about, but we're going to present it in a way that will give you a different insight into it, possibly, and help you to, if this is what you need to heal in a way that is more aligned with expressing who you really are in the world. So that was a very long introduction. Antoinette, over to you.
It was perfect, Loretta. So I myself had never heard the term near enemies until very recently when I bought an online course with an IFS psychologist, Robert Faulkner. And I was just intrigued. He very briefly mentioned it. And so I went and did some research. And when I uncovered the meaning of it and how it operates, I had great depths of insight into this very stuff that had been playing out in my life, and I just hadn't been able to contextualize it or say exactly what it was. So let me introduce this concept, and then we are going to give some examples, including our own. So every human being, well, every is maybe a bit broad, but any human being that's listening to this podcast, and most human beings strive to be good people. We do our best to cultivate genuine virtues and to be the best version of ourselves. So, what has this got to do with near enemies and far enemies? Well, far enemies are the very opposite of what we are trying to achieve. Near enemies, interestingly, can be applied to nearly every one of these virtues that we are trying to cultivate. But while the far enemy is clearly the opposite of the virtue, the near enemy appears close to the desired virtue, but it actually impedes it, or we may even confuse it as being the true virtue. So on the surface, near enemies look very helpful and seem very warranted, but they are the very thing that trip us up. So the best way to explain this and bring it to you through really good examples. So love and hate are very clear opposites. So we all strive towards love, and we're all very clear about the opposite is hate. But what is the near enemy of love? Now, there can be a number of them, but conditional codependency could be confused as love. How many of us have fallen into that trap? We love because we depend on getting something in return, and we often erode our own authentic experience for the love we long for. So I'm going to interject now, before I give you any more examples, to say this is unconscious, all of this, until it becomes conscious. So don't start being hard on yourself or beating up on yourself if you start going, oh my goodness, I didn't know there was my own internal enemy, because we don't deliberately do this. And it takes quite a lot of practice to catch these near enemies, because they can be very subtle and they're so disguised as good and us trying to be the best version of ourselves, and they're so unconscious until we see them that we can't be hard on ourselves. We're just hoping that this awareness will bring to you the ability to take your self-awareness that we promote even further and just start looking at how you react and how you behave. So another example is regret. So we know regret is a negative thing. So we tend towards the opposite, but the near enemy of regret, of healthy regret, because regret can be a very healthy thing. Sorry, regret is healthy because if we've done something wrong, we need to have a conscience and we need to have remorse. However, shame or guilt are the near enemies of healthy regret. And sure, shame is one of the most hidden emotions in human beings. We've said that before. In fact, there's research that's shown that people would rather die than feel shame. And a lot of us are very riddled with guilt. I had no idea how much until I started uncovering all these layers within me. A near enemy of confidence could be self-aggrandization or egotism. A near enemy of being honest and integritous could include venting or trauma dumping. And for me, that has been true. I only saw it recently, and not only because I'm an incredibly honest person, but with that, the near enemy has been really big self-righteousness and judgment. I had no idea until recently. It shocked me. And I undoubtedly vent or trauma dump. So
I'm
that's
also a
some.
venter.
Are you? Yeah, I mean,
I love a good
I'm.
rant, eh? I mean, I love a good rant. Like I said, I'm not really a trauma dumper because I have control issues. So I don't, my limiting belief is I need to control myself, others in the world. So I don't want it to get too messy. But I can vent, eh? So rather than
But
actually
Loretta,
just acknowledging that I'm angry, I will just vent and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk so that I can actually get the feeling out without having to feel the feeling because that's out of control. It's an attempt to control the out of controlness that anger makes me feel.
oh, that's so interesting. And I mean, that's very, very interesting because I actually think venting is healthy in a safe space with the right person for the right reasons about the right thing. But I've seen in myself this venting and trauma dumping being the near enemy of honesty is that I will tell people who are friends of mine or whatever how terrible these hypocrites are, or how racist these people are living around me, or how dare my neighbors act like that. It's so selfish. And I'm like, it's true, maybe what I'm saying, but there's the self-righteous me who would never do something like that. So it's not just honesty, it's consideration, kindness, which are all the things I do have in me and I practice. But my near enemy of all of those has been over venting, being over angry, and voicing it to other people about other people. Does that make any sense? And
100%.
throwing in massive dollops of self-righteousness, like, I would never do that. How do people think that's okay? And I'm like, okay, then. So the
Mm.
near enemy, I'm going to give you two more examples, and then we're going to have a bit of a conversation, is the near enemy of acceptance. This is another one. We've really been socialized, conditioned, and spiritualized to go with the flow, to be accepting.
Mm.
But how many of us allow the near enemy of the transgression of healthy boundaries? And for me, I told Loretta I wasn't sure I'd share this before we recorded, but I'm going to share it. I've become an easygoing, accepting, and kind person. But one of my near enemies there is I maybe am too kind, too easygoing, too accepting in the name of, I suppose the unconscious thing was being liked or
Mm.
thinking I'm being kind. And the next thing I find myself sending off a message to a person, which actually is a manipulation disguised in beautiful language. And it's been very shocking to see it in myself. I don't often do it, but I'll give too much or give somebody something too cheap, and then I'll send some message going, oh, I'm so short of money now. And I'm like, what am I trying to make this person feel bad because I only asked for X amount? So
Mm.
that's two of my very clear admissions and examples. So,
If I could just jump in here.
yeah,
Sorry, are you
sure.
done? Sorry.
Yeah,
No,
go jump in, Loretta. Yeah.
so we did an episode right at the beginning, right, about uncovering our limiting beliefs and how, we have these foundational limiting beliefs, and that because of the belief that we have, which is it's almost always negative about ourselves, I need to be perfect, I need to be in control, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy. And that as a consequence of these beliefs, we develop coping strategies, right? So we develop coping strategies, patterns of behavior, so that we can cover up what we believe to be true about ourselves, or compensate for that, so that people will like us and accept us and we won't get rejected. But the other part of that, and people find this very, very difficult. I mean, I also struggled with this in the beginning, is that as a consequence of your strategy, you develop certain things, personality traits. So one of the compensatory strategies of when we're unworthy, and this is the most common limiting belief, we've all got this one to a certain extent, some people more than others. We compensate for being unworthy by being valuable, by being of service, by being kind, by being liked. All right. So we do things that get us liked so that we can get accepted. But then what happens is we get praised for that, and then we start identifying as being a kind person, which means that now we can never do anything that is unkind, like say no when we don't have the capacity for something, all right? Refusing someone something that they want. We see this with, I see this with mothers and their children. People who've got I'm unworthy, they allow their children and pets to do whatever they want, actually, all right? There doesn't seem to be any boundaries, all right? And it's not because they're bad parents or pet owners. It's because saying no for them is associated with being unkind. Disciplining is associated with unkindness. And because they unconsciously are now, I'm going to say, addicted to having to be kind, they're compelled, addictive is maybe not the right word, they're compelled to be kind. That kindness is not driven always by a complete open heart. So when you are in your heart, when you are aligned with your higher self, when you are more aligned with your God self, then the kindness becomes really genuine. But when you're compelled to be kind, no matter what, the kindness is not always genuine. So that then leads, for example, to a lack of boundaries. And so then people take advantage of you, but you're obliged to be kind. And so then what ends up happening is you become resentful. And then but you don't see your kindness as being something that in doing it in that way is actually compromising to who you are. It actually saps your energy. It doesn't energize you. And so, when we're expressing these virtues from a true place of alignment, not an egoic compensation, we're energized by those virtues. So if a friend of mine reaches out to me and says, please, can you help me? And I say, yes, of course I can help you. I'm energized in doing that and I say, yes, of course, because I have the capacity. I genuinely care about them and I want to help them and I'm available to them. Fine. But when a client, for example, asks me if they can have a session on a Sunday, and I'm not good enough as well. So I don't want to be mean to the client. So I say yes, but actually I'm resentful because Sunday is like my time. That's the time when I connect with my family. That's when I rest. That's when I regenerate. I don't want to see a client on a Sunday. And now I'm being kind by accommodating them. I'm being accommodating and kind. But the truth is, I'm actually resentful. And I'm not only resentful at them, I'm resentful at myself. And so that's the energy that I unconsciously will take into the session. Now, I think I'm going to be doing the best job I can, but you know what? Probably not. So that's how subtle it is. We start identifying with the characteristics that develop because of our coping mechanisms and our coping strategies. And then we think we've always got to be like that. And when we are not genuine, and this is unconscious, when we're not genuine unconsciously, then it becomes a near enemy. Am I right? I mean, does
Yeah,
that, do you
and I
think?
think
Yeah.
it's also conditioning and socialization and
100%.
expectations that we unknowingly have bought into, like, and it becomes a lack of self-love and a lack of healthy boundaries to look after ourselves because we somehow have this martyr in us or this. Yeah, and so we have to be very, very self-compassionate and very kind to ourselves when we start seeing these parts of ourselves because they're shocking, especially when they're things that we have genuinely developed as virtues or we've tried to, and we can still be kind. Those of us that are kind, even for the wrong reasons, unknowingly, we are still kind people, and it's to carry on being kind but to be kind to ourselves as well. And that's come along in quite a few of our episodes. So, I mean, because the near enemy is a mental state, okay, and it's very close to the beneficial state, but it has traces of a worldview that is perfumed by the three poisons, according to the Buddhists or Buddhist psychology, of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So if you really contemplate those, it's very, very interesting. It's an attempted expression of a virtue, but it's absent of wisdom. And it takes quite some doing to get to a point of seeing these and not being shocked by it, and also not going to the opposite, because then suddenly you can go, no, no, I'm too kind. I didn't ask enough rent. I give too freely. I got to toughen up now. And then there can be that pendulum swing. And the interesting thing, Brené Brown started doing research on this, so you can go and look up some of her stuff. And she says there are emotional states we have that feel genuine. They feel like genuine emotions, but they come from another place. She says emotions have their evil cousins. And for example, jealous possessiveness might look like love, another example of a near enemy of love. This can really harm relationships instead of building them. Near enemies, by their nature, are very hard to recognize because they're very, very similar to positive states of mind and to our positive traits. So noticing them requires a lot of self-awareness and to begin and vigilance. And it really helps to know what to look for so that you can start rejecting them before you've sent the message and you regret it. So, Loretta, I don't know if you want to chip in or if we want to go through a few more examples.
I just want to say one thing, and this is something that I've noticed in myself and in my clients. One of the sneaky strategies that our ego has to stop us from transforming, growing, expanding, because all that stuff is the unknown, and that stuff is very threatening, is to let us think we know it. So as soon as you know
Oh.
something, you become really confident that I know it, confident that I know it, right? And this is one of mine. I'm like, oh yeah, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I know this. Then you don't actually listen to the subtleties. And so what I've noticed with myself and with my clients, so I have a process where I help people uncover their limiting beliefs and their strategies. And in fact, I do this on session one because it's like the groundwork, right? And so it's a fairly easy exercise. And so you can uncover what you believe to be true about yourself. You know, I'm unworthy or I'm not good enough. Usually not a massive surprise to people. And then the question is always like, so what did you in this memory, because we use a specific memory, like what did you do? What action did you take when you didn't get what you wanted? And it's in there that the gold lies, because that's the compensatory strategies. Now, some strategies can be I lie to get out of trouble. Some strategies can be I overachieve. So you see, some strategies look more acceptable than others. That once we've identified this, people go, oh, I know what my limiting belief is, and I know what my strategies are. And then, because they think they know, they stop looking. The vigilance goes because now we know. So think about this. You go to a lecture on a topic that you know a lot about, and the lecturer starts talking, and the language they're using, you're like, your automatic thing is like, oh yes, well, I know this. So what do? Well, then you're on your phone and you're not really listening to what they're saying. So you're not actually open because you think you know it, you're not open to something that you might not know. You lose your curiosity when you think you know. And what happens then is because you lose your curiosity, because so vigilant sounds like it's unsafe, and it is unsafe, but I prefer curious. Can we just be curious? Because curious just generally doesn't come with judgment, all right? So, like, I'm curious. Is this a near enemy, or am I really in my heart today? Okay. And Antoinette's going to give us some lovely ways of knowing. It's like, okay, today this is a near enemy. Okay, well, if I know that this is what it is, then I can make a choice that's going to be different to if I'm just going to act from the compulsion, right? I can choose to wait before I send the message. I can choose to really get into my heart before I have the conversation, whatever, all right? And so what I've noticed with clients and with myself is that once you start, very often when you start doing this work, you start uncovering the stuff, then you think you know your strategy, and you lose your curiosity. And these things, when we start talking about like what character traits are you identified with as being who you are, and you can't not be that thing, for example, and whether we call them that or whether we call them coping strategies or we call them near enemies, they are subtle. They're like next level subtle. And the reason why I mention this is because I've started seeing this now in my coaching business. So I've been doing this, just the strictly coaching work, and not really homeopathic consults like I used to do them, probably for about 5 years now. And so now I like follow up with clients that I saw a year or 2 or 3 ago. It's been long enough for me to actually be able to see the trend. And for the people who have stayed curious, they still fall off the wagon, and we're human, right? I mean, I have a coach too. We all have our stuff. But by and large, they've maintained what they've learned, and they've progressed with it. And the ones who have not maintained their curiosity, not all of them, but like every now and again, one of them reaches out to me and they go, I'm like back where I started. I'm like, no, you're not back where you started, because you didn't know then what you know now. But what's happened is you've lost your curiosity. And so these subtle things, they're the ones that are now tripping us up. And so that's why it is important. We talk about self-awareness. We talk about, being self-aware and being vigilant. This is, we also say that healing it's a journey, it's not a destination, all those platitudes. But the truth is, it is actually, it's an evolving journey. And if you're driving your car and you're on a journey and you're traveling, you have times where you stop and you can have 3 or 4 nights at a lovely place and you can just chill and relax. But then when you get back in your car, you've got to be awake and alert, and you've got to be watching the road, right? And you can have a lovely time. And if you take your eye off the road and if you fall asleep at the wheel because you haven't been focusing, then there's a really good chance that, you're going to have a minor or a major mishap. And it's exactly the same on this journey. So it's not that you're constantly looking for what's wrong with you. It's that you're just staying curious about how your strategies are evolving. Because as we grow and expand and live more in alignment with our higher self or our spirit, your ego doesn't roll over and play dead. Your defense mechanisms that are trying to keep you alive, they're still coming along with you, and very often they become more subtle. So that's why we want to stay curious.
Yeah, and if I reflect back on my 8 years on this journey, the more I've got to a point where I go, okay, I've got this now, I've got this piece, and I've got these, I'm catching the triggers. Well, that is the most dangerous thing you can ever do. When you say it's done and I got it, you are in trouble. Because what happens, in fact, is it's an unfolding. It's not a quick fix. It's not and it changes over time, and we need different things at different times. So the more you start recognizing the far enemies and the obvious things, and you work with a Loretta or a coach, and you start integrating and healing and doing shadow work, the more is going to get revealed, actually, and the more discomfort there would be as a potential moving through to a breaking out to an even better life. So I got an analogy in like a vision the other day, and then I saw it in a book yesterday called Everyday Mystic. And I got this vision of a seesaw. It was so interesting because I always say it's like walking a tightrope or riding a bike, but I got a seesaw. And like on the one side, I am in this peace and flow, and miracles are happening, and I'm calm, even joyful. And then I'm on this other side, and it's absolute anxiety and fear, and then my body's reacting, and I'm reaching for my rice cakes, my coping strategy, and I'm like, I feel like I'm on the seesaw. And you know what this woman said in this book? She said she was given a vision by God, I think, when she asked, does humanity have to change very fast and have we run out of time? But anyway, what she got shown was that there is a seesaw. So, what happens on the seesaw is the more you step into your higher self and your God self and who you really are, what happens is it tips the ego, of course, because the ego is now the ego is less and less and less. So, what happens on a seesaw? It gets heavier and heavier on the God self side. So, the seesaw flips up and all the ego stuff comes tumbling down. And that feels like chaos. It feels like tragedy. It feels like suffering, and on an individual level and a global level. And she said, what she got, and that was magnificent for me, because when our stuff comes tumbling towards us, like me after 8 years ago, and now I'm seeing the subtle manipulation I do, this is horrific. And no, what's happening is because I am more aligned with who I really am and living that. Of course, all the unconscious debris and stuff I might have the rest of my life, but it's going to keep on tipping into on the other side of the seesaw, and it's going to feel devastating. So the reason we're bringing this is to also know, if you know this, then you don't get self-berating. And I can get very disheartened in the past when I go, but I thought I'd done this thing. I don't overeat anymore. I don't. And here it is again. Well, it's actually a positive sign in a way, if you look at that analogy. So, and actually, potentially, this could be a lifetime path. I think for me, it's getting the seesaw is much more on the peace side and the flow side, but at the same time, my stuff's coming up in a like a volcano. So it's really about what we do with it. But knowing all of this as a context makes a very, very big difference for this journey. So I don't know if we want to dive a little bit more into a detailed example of compassion, with the near enemy being pity and the far enemy cruelty, because it's a very well-written example. This, I think it came from Brene Brown. Are you happy to do that, Loretta?
Yes, sure.
So if compassion is the impetus to reduce suffering, which it is, its far enemy is cruelty. And we can see this playing out in the world in Technicolor. So these two are easily identified as opposites. A near enemy, however, can sometimes be difficult to distinguish, as in pity. We've all been there, though. See if you can identify this. Me. So let's say I'm going through a really, really hard time, and someone says, "Oh, I am so sorry, Antoinette, that's terrible." But to me, it doesn't feel like they truly mean it. There's a condescending tone in their voice. Or maybe we've done it to someone else. We might tell ourselves we're being compassionate. We might even believe we're expressing compassion. And yet, we unconsciously maintain some level of separateness, perhaps thinking this would never happen to us because we're different. And pity, I see that now so much with my mother's in a terrible state, and some of the pity coming her way, because pity feels like compassion to people, but it's not the same. Because when we pity, we can't sit with that person suffering. We feel pity for them, and that's a really bad energetic vibration to put on someone who needs compassion. And I think it's often because we can't even imagine ourselves in that situation of suffering, and it makes us feel worse.
As you were speaking, this made me think about charity, like charitable things. So I have just recently, so not recently, I'm on the board of directors for an NPO in South Africa called the Kula Natural Health Center. And just recently, the Kula Natural Health Center took over the funding of a project in Malawi. It's a very big project. There's a nursery school, there's a maternity section where women have their babies, there is an outpatients where there's a doctor and there's a pharmacy, and then there's a homeopathic section. And there's like 33 people employed there, and it's in a remote part of Malawi, okay? And I was very fortunate in that they approached me to go and do some work there in August of this year. And so I went and I put in some systems for them so that we could track what was going on with the funding and da da da. And I went again in October now. But when I was there in August, I'm sorry, it's quite a long story, but when I was there in August, the nursery school was closed. So I didn't get to see the school or the children because it was school holidays. When I went there now in October, the nursery school was open. And we have a feeding scheme. So the nursery school used to be open until 12 and the children used to get porridge mid-morning. But now the school is open until half past 3. So they get 2 meals. And a lot of people send their children to school so that they can get fed. That is the reality of life in a very poor African country. Okay. And there are no Europeans in that area. So, a European, a white-skinned person stands, I mean, we stand out like a sore thumb. And there's a part of me the first time that I went that was quite uncomfortable because I didn't want to be perceived as being part of this benevolent organization that was pitying the people, right? And so this last time when I went there now, we went into the classroom so that we need to increase the size of the school. We've got too many children now. I mean, and they are so cute, right? They're from the ages of about 2 until 5. So they're adorable, right? And then there was literally tens of them, more than 110. There were 110 the day that I went there. And I was so moved by these children who actually have so little and are yet so like joyful. I said to someone, honestly, I felt like a rock star because they wanted to shake our hands and they wanted to say hello to us. And, they wanted to play with us and they were just so accepting and so warm and welcoming. Sorry. So the point I'm trying to make here is that in many what I realized is that compassion is when we don't put ourselves above those people. So at some point, I felt myself feeling pity. I felt so sorry for these children that I thought didn't have a future. And what I realized when I was having that feeling was that I was behaving exactly inside like I didn't want to be perceived, as this sort of benevolent European kind of person who was just bringing the money, all right, and like providing the charity. But when I sat with that for a little bit, I was like, when I looked at the joy on those children, I appreciated what was really going on in those children. And by and large, they were all actually quite happy in the moment for the time that I was seeing them. I realized that compassion helps us to not to say, on the one hand, by the grace of God or whoever, this could be my child, and also not look down or not feel sorry for. And compassion then compels us to actually put things in place that can make a difference for people. So there's a very fine line between feeling sorry for them, because as soon as you feel sorry for them, it becomes them and us. I have this amazing life and they are suffering. But when I have compassion for them and when I have compassion, I can see the potential. I think that's the difference. When I have pity, all I feel is the pain of being separate from these people and guilty because I don't have this. When I have compassion, I can actually see how I can use my resources, whatever those are, my thoughts or my whatever, and I can see the potential in them. And that opens up a whole vista of what it is that I can do to help those people unlock their potential. So I'm sorry about that long story, but I think it's quite relevant because a lot of people get into the NPO space where it is run by pity. It's compassion, it's pity masquerading as compassion. And it actually makes us less effective. Makes us less effective in trying to do what it is we're trying to do, which is actually ultimately empower. So an observation.
Nice example, Loretta. I mean, it's great that even when people do good in the name of ego or feeling better for themselves or pity, I think it still helps, but the whole energy is completely different. And people pick up on energy, you know, we are all one. And so I'm just going to mention quickly a few more examples, and then we're going to go into some tools, hey, and what to do, how to recognize this, and what to do about it. So appreciative joy, I'd never heard this before, but it comes from the Buddhist psychology perspective. Appreciative joy, the far enemy is jealousy or pride. I'll have to contemplate that. I've never heard it. And the near enemy of appreciative joy is conditional joy. And we have spoken about this, actually, conditional joy. And equanimity is a very, very interesting one. And this is a thing that we're all told to practice and trying to practice. And we have to be very careful of the near enemy of equanimity, which is indifference or ignorance. The far enemy is craving or aversion, but equanimity can become indifference. Emotional near enemies that Brené Brown talks about. Blind optimism is a near enemy of hope. While hope is grounded in reality, blind optimism ignores potential challenges and can lead to a lot of disappointment. And that's why Loretta always I bring both sides, because hyper independence, this is one I can take on, or I used to be. I'm extremely self-sufficient. I always have been, made my own money, traveled the world, never been married, never had children. But I didn't realize till a few years ago it was actually hyper independence. And hyper independence is the near enemy of self sufficiency. And actually, it was a form of dissociation for me. It can isolate people, and it prevents them from seeking help when needed. I can identify with that. And it's so interesting. That one of the things she said, and I hadn't thought about myself in this way before, is when we're dissociated or like a disconnected person, but we come across as very connected. I love people. I talk easily. I share easily. I probably over talk actually. And I realized from doing this research, I do that, and it comes across as real intimacy, actually. She was talking about intimacy and the near enemy of that, but it's not. I never actually, I very, very, very seldom let people get very, very close to me to the point that I unconditionally trust them. So it seems like I'm doing the intimacy thing, but I've had to be honest with myself and say, well, it's not actually real intimacy, it's mimicking it. The near enemy of connection is control, she says. So something to think about. So why is this important? Loretta, should I just dive into that and then you can chip in?
Yeah, you do it.
So understanding and addressing near enemies helps us to act with genuine goodness that is infused with wisdom and understanding. Near enemies undermine our assumed efforts towards accumulating merit, and to identify near enemies of our good qualities is to bring greater awareness to our expression of emotions and the effect it has on ourselves and others. These near enemies can mislead us into thinking we are achieving what we hope to achieve, while they actually undermine our true emotional experiences. By understanding this concept of near enemies, we can better navigate our emotional landscapes and cultivate genuine virtues that promote personal growth and authentic connections. Brené Brown talked a lot about, so I'll actually put a link to her article about how this keeps us from proper, authentic, intimate connection. And I must say, I felt quite sad this weekend when I recognized in myself, I have a lot of people in my life. I connect very easily. But if I'm really honest with myself, my near enemies have stopped me from having really deep relationships because I've maybe been scared to be truly authentic. And you and I talked about this before we recorded, to bring all of ourselves, the seemingly too intense or too dark side. And therefore, there's always this play that goes around where I feel connected and people feel connected, but I'm not doing, I do have deep connections now with very few people who I trust, but it's something to look out for this, you know. So I don't know if you want to add to that before I go on to how to recognize them and how to change them, Loretta.
No, I just really want to reiterate that when we don't recognize them, then we can't be the fullest expression of ourselves. And in actual fact, and that inhibits us. It makes things more difficult, and in that we create more obstacles for ourselves. But the truth is, when we do that, it's also a detriment to others, because we're dimming our lights in the world. And so when you are being curious, or when you're on this path for yourself, very often one of the reasons, especially when we've got I'm unworthy as a limiting belief, which almost all of us have, remember, it's like we think that it's not okay, that it's selfish to be spending so much time and effort and energy on yourself. But it actually isn't selfish, because the more integrated you are, the more you mirror that to the people around you, your spouse, your colleagues, your boss, your children, your friends, I don't know, people who go to your church or whatever you worship, right? So you are not actually just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for yourself, and you're doing it for the collective.
Yeah, and as someone who's now 64, I mean, I don't regret anything, but I did have a bit of a sadness in me this weekend. So I'm glad some of you will get this information when you're still young, that I have, unfortunately, and it's going to change now, so I'm glad I've caught it. It's never too late, because I have had some really unconscious limiting belief that I'm actually a piece of shit and I shouldn't be here. And if I was my authentic self, oh my word, I would be too big, too much, too loud, too whatever. And I have to I cannot express my true self. It's too weird. It's too whatever. And I've missed out on some magnificent opportunities, actually, because I've realized now, as I've become more and more of who I am and not cared whether people like me or not, but also doing it in a way where I don't have to piss people off, you know, because I used to do it every now and again and then get rejected. And then, of course, because it wasn't coming out and then it was exploding out. And now I've realized some people just love the crazy me, or what I term crazy. They love all I am and how I am. And I'm like, wow, this is actually so easy. And we don't need a lot of people. But you know what? This can roll off our tongues now, Loretta and I, but we do daily practice. We've been at this for a very long time. And it's a process and it's a journey, but this awareness, just knowing information, is such a big starting point, because I didn't know this kind of stuff until recently. So, whether should I dive into? I had to really reflect on this and do deep research. There's not a lot of information out there, but so how do you do this then? And how do you recognize these near enemies, and how do you go about changing them?
Yeah.
So there is some repetition here, but I'm just going to go through it again. Self-reflection, and I love that word curiosity that Loretta brought. Just keep on asking questions. And I would make a reflection now after our conversation that part of my self-reflection has been, if I'm feeling uncomfortable, anxious, stressed, not good enough, sad, I just get curious about it. Why did I eat 4 rice cakes after my breakfast when I wasn't hungry? I don't judge that anymore. I don't hate on myself. But I ask myself, so why did you do that? Because now you feel uncomfortable and full and a bit cross with yourself. So just being curious, open, aware, and not judging, but you need the moment to moment self awareness. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? How are you reacting to situations? What is your genuine intention? That's been a biggie for me recently. And
Mhm.
sometimes you can't catch it till afterwards. So don't be upset with yourself if you've sent that message or said that thing and then you go, oops,
Yeah.
that was coming from the wrong place. I found I repeat things over and over again, sometimes for months, sometimes even longer before that I have the awareness. And the trick is if you even aware afterwards and you don't beat up on yourself, but you just stay curious and open and knowing, like Loretta always says, your vision creates your reality. So what you really want to be, and then you just leave it. Ask yourself, yeah, is this coming from a place of care and strength, or is it disguising something else? Just ask. Reflect on your intentions so that you can stay true to your positive qualities and avoid these near enemies, but do it without being self-critical and hard on yourself. That's the challenge. And just keep on being open. That's what curiosity is, to learning and growing. Keep asking questions. Keep asking for your next step. What is my next step? And the point does come where we transform these things into true positive qualities. And it's a process, and it's not always easy. It takes time, but it does end up in self-improvement on every level. And of course, to a more fulfilling and connected life with others and those outside of us. Stay self-compassionate. I'm going to say that 200,000 times. This is
Absolutely.
hard. It is hard, Loretta. Am I right? When you
I'm
start seeing these parts of yourself surface, especially after you've done so much inner work and spiritual work, and you think, oh, I thought I was so good, but look at me. This is actually an enemy in me. It can be shocking to be this honest with yourself, but please try and avoid the temptation to be disgusted at yourself. That's my word, because I used to get disgusted at myself, and to self-berate. Yeah, and start seeking. Sorry, I made notes because this has been also profound for me. I didn't want to miss anything. Start seeking genuine connections. And that's what I was talking about just now. Don't worry how many people there are or whether the community around you likes you or not. Start focusing on building relationships that are based on true understanding, compassion, and that are not just surface level interactions. Look beyond the appearance of positive qualities and strive for genuine connections that support mutual growth. I made the mistake over and over again. I can still fall into the trap. As soon as someone speaks the right language, if they speak spiritual, if they speak the right words, I'm in, boy. I fall straight in. And then I wake up a few months or a few years later and I go, oh, those were just words. That's been one of my traps. We can only come to this point in ourselves, I feel, after quite a long journey of self-reflection. But if you can get to it quicker, I applaud you. And if you need help, come and ask. So, discerning between a genuine virtue and its near enemy is a practice in applying wisdom. So, yeah, is there something I'm clinging to here or avoiding? Or is this true interdependence between me and the other person? Because at all costs, we've got to avoid bypassing, and we can't avoid unconscious bypassing unless we start getting clear of our deepest intentions. So it's a state of embodied awareness. You can do any, in my experience, Loretta, I don't know what you think, you can do any amount of meditating on your yoga mat or mantras or gratitude journals. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but you can do any amount of that. But this is an embodied awareness. It's a living yogic life in your body. It's a somatic experience. While you're living, eating, engaging, is my heart truly open? Are my actions aligned with my deeper truth? And some reflections I popped in here from my own experience. Please know it's hard to see parts of yourself like this. Requires acceptance without self-judgment. I'm repeating myself, but this is important. It's not going to change immediately when you see it. It takes time and consistent awareness. It's not intentional. We don't intentionally do this. It's unconscious. So you know what would be amazing if you would share some of your experiences with us. So we know we're
me.
all in this together. We know,
Oh no, too much
our
the audience.
listeners or Loretta, or you've shared already before we started. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing, and I reiterate what Anjanetta said. And sometimes it can be difficult to share. It is actually about sharing experiences. One thing that I found, and listen, I'm very selective about what I share and with who I share it, right? Because I'm trying to curate it and control it in order to keep this image that I have of myself of being, I don't know, Zen or whatever it is that I'm after. But what I have noticed is that if you have someone that you trust, this can be anyone, a trusted friend, but there's got to be trust in that relationship. If you can have someone witness the truth of what you've discovered about yourself without judging you. And here's the thing, they're almost never going to judge you. You know why? Because you are always 10,000 times harder on yourself than anyone else. So whatever you think is the most like revolting thing about yourself, someone else might go, well, yeah, that's pretty bad, but so I don't find it revolting. Okay.
Yes.
So when you allow yourself to be witnessed, when you discover something like this about yourself and you have someone that you trust, and you can actually say to them, I don't need you to make a comment. I don't need you to make me feel better. I just want you to witness this that I've discovered about myself. When someone else accepts it, just one person accepts what you've said, and you don't feel judged by them, I'm going to say it almost allows you to integrate that completely, because what it does is
That's
it takes the
amazing.
self-hatred away. So,
Yes.
before we started this recording, I said to Antoinette, because I've been on a workshop about my darkness and my shadow, I said to her, this is my deepest, darkest thing that I discovered about myself. Now, I mean, I was able to say that to her, A, because I trust her, and B, because in this workshop, I shared this with people that I trust. And you know what? No one even raised an eyebrow. I mean, no one was shocked to hear this about me, which is another thing that I found quite interesting, because no one was really shocked. Because you see, this is the thing. We think we can hide this stuff from everybody, but actually, mostly we can't. Someone always witnesses it. You know how like lies are always caught out, so when someone commits a crime, they're almost always caught, right? If you lie about something, it can come and bite you on the butt years after you've told the lie, all right? But basically, the truth will out. That's why there's a saying. And so, now, I don't want to make you all paranoid because you think people think what your deepest, darkest secrets. But honestly, the thing that you think you're hiding so well is sometimes not as well hidden as what you think it is. And the thing that you think is so revolting is probably not nearly as revolting as you think it is. And when someone else actually just reflects that to you, that is like a burden being lifted off yourself. And that makes it so much easier for you to accept it in yourself. Because if
Yeah,
someone
and
else can
Loretta,
accept
when
it, you can.
we focus when we don't share it, we focus perpetually on what we feel is a deep, dark secret or a shadow part of ourselves that's terrible. And it's so interesting because Richard Rohr, who's a mystical spiritual teacher I really admire, but he is a Christian. He used to always say, when I listened to his stuff, just confess it to one other person. And I didn't get that. But I realized when I shared with you as well before we recorded, Simone Stain and I shared she asked me if she could share her deepest, darkest, horriblest secret with me because she trusts me. I'm like, yeah, sure. And when she told it to me, I was like, what? That's not a bad, dark thing. But that's the other thing. We think it's so, we make up the story in our head about how bad and dark it is. And for me, I'm like, I don't know why that's so bad for you. And then I said, I'll share mine, which I'm not sharing on the podcast because I think it's pretty messed up. But she said to me, oh, I have exactly the same. Thank goodness I'm not the only person around. And I'm like, so what it does, it opens the integration rather than the dissociation of those parts of ourselves. Because when we share it with another person, firstly, we confess it. Secondly, usually it's received. We have to be discerning about how we share it and with who, with trust. But when the other person goes, oh wow, and also I said to you, I can see the good side of that shadow side of you, and you've seen it too now. And we realize maybe it's not so bad, or we're not the only people running around there with this dirty secret, which we think is a dirty secret. And then we don't dissociate all these different parts. And once we integrate them, we can be this full version of ourselves and trust ourselves. So that was beautiful. Thank you. So, Loretta, do you want to end us off? I think we've been at this a long
Well,
time.
okay. Didn't really think of an ending, but I think yeah, this is what I'm going to say. So I think it's I think it was at the top of the temple where the Oracle of Delphi was. The saying at the top was "Know thyself," and we know this, right? I mean, we see this, okay? But honestly, the greatest gift you can give yourself and everyone else in your life and the world is to know yourself for who you truly are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's everything. The deep, dark secrets, the bits you think are revolting, the bits that you think are amazing, the bits that you think are mediocre, and in fact, the bits that you have, the story that you've made up about yourself because of these coping strategies that you had to
Mm-hmm.
develop in order to survive. They're genius. Your coping strategies are a sign of your genius because they have actually enabled you to survive. So the more you
Wow.
know this and the more you see this and the more you see this in other people, I'm very fortunate because I work with people. So I see this all the time and I see it every day. And because I see it every day in everyone else, it makes it so much easier to accept in myself. But you can do the same. You can start seeing it in yourself and then you'll start seeing it in other people. And it makes you more open to life itself with all its beauty and all its mess and the messy, icky bits and the transcendent, magical bits. So, if you were ever going to give yourself and the world a gift, it would be to get to know yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible even says what you bring forth will save you, and what you don't bring forth will kill you. And God loves all of us, and all the Paul. What did I listen to? I think it was Faulkner. He said, "The light, the savior within, does not come from above; it comes from the darkness within." And I think that's a truth that we have not easily been exposed to
I agree.
because we're always trying to focus on being nice and bright and breezy and all that. Yeah. So please share this episode. Oh, Loretta's got one more thing.
I
Go
was
for it.
just to add to that, right? Within your shadow develops very often to hide your your biggest light.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So, that thing that you might be judging as the most dark thing about you, it's always neutral. It's actually neutral. It has all these negative things, but it also has positive things. The curses and blessings are always equal. So, all these strategies and these layers and these stories, they've all developed for us to actually cover up the parts of ourselves that we think are not deserving of being alive. And it's usually the too much or the too little or the whatever it is that we're judging about ourselves. So this is not the perpetual work of digging around to find out what's wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. This is about discovering who you really are.
And integrating and accepting and changing what you need to change. But
100%. 100%.
and therefore, that becomes the birthing ground of true love and acceptance, and deep connection. Sure, don't wait till you're my age, okay?
Get on it.
Please share this because I think it's valuable information, what it has been for me and Loretta. So thank you for listening. And as Loretta always says, share the link with someone on their phone because people might go, oh, yeah, I must listen to that, but they don't go and do it. Write us a review, please, on the podcast platforms because it helps us get a higher rating so we can share this with more people. And leave us a comment if you watch on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks,
Till next
Loretta,
time.
for an inspiring conversation. Bye.
Bye.